and welcome to another episode of Subject to Interpretation. My name is Maria Ceballos-Wallace, and today I am pleased to welcome two recent graduates from the Mora Institute of Interpretation's first Train the Trainer Medical Interpreter Training Track. This was held in April of 2024. Since completing the training, both guests have taught their first 40-hour medical training course for interpreters, and they're here to share their experiences, their insights, and how the Train the Trainer program prepared them to lead their own groups of future interpreters. We're also going to be sharing some exciting news about the next Train the Trainer program starting in 2025. But first, let me introduce you to Dani Serna. Dani is a certified Spanish medical interpreter with over 20 years of experience and currently serves as the Cultural Services Manager at Logansport Memorial Hospital in Indiana. Welcome, Dani. Nice to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me, Maria.
Now, we also have with us today Miguel Juarez Vidales, and Miguel is a national certified medical interpreter with over 13 years of experience, and he currently works as a program specialist at the Idaho Council on Developmental Disabilities. Hi, Miguel.
Hi, Maria. Thank you for having me.
Well, this is really exciting for me because a couple of, in April of this year, or perhaps a little earlier, I did an episode in which I interviewed Eliane Saphir Marcus, and she was one of your instructors. And we were talking about how finally this dream that the De La Mora Institute of Interpretation had of creating a formalized train-the-trainer program had finally come to fruition, and how it was beginning in April. And I am just really excited to have you guys here because you were part of this first endeavor in this first program. So let's get down to what they say, brass tacks rather. So let's start with you, Miguel. Tell me a little bit about this 45-hour training course that you took. What was the composition of it, and how much of it was medical interpreter training, and how much of it was maybe something else?
Yeah, so the course was it's pretty packed with information, with a lot of material to prepare you to be able to teach the class. A lot of the information, most of the information is focused on teaching how to become a medical interpreter, and then a smaller portion is dedicated specifically to the medical terminology and the medical information of the profession.
And what about you, Dani? What I believe that the program was kind of split up in a 30-hour where there was a pedagogy, and then there was a portion in which you were being prepared to actually, teach the content of medical interpreting, just as Miguel alluded to. What did you? I would have originally thought, oh, well, they're just going to give me the information that I have to impart in these 40 hours, hour by hour, and that's it. But there was a lot of pedagogy in there, right? There was a lot of skill building, not just for you to share, but for yourself, right?
Yeah, I believe a lot of the methodology implemented by the De La Mora Institute of Interpretation, it's quite admirable because you can really see that the instructors, which is Agustin and Elian, they have been doing this for a while, and the concepts that they're teaching you to be able to transfer this knowledge to other individuals that are interested in becoming interpreters, for me, it really truly was invaluable. And I believe a lot in the weightlifting method that they teach. I think that's one of the parts that really truly impressed me because I took a course with them in the past, and that's it truly, for me, it was a game changer, and I think for future interpreters it can also be a game changer.
Well, I'm not going to quiz either of you on what you learned specifically, but Miguel, maybe you could tell me, if you have a reflection on the methodology that probably impacted you the most as you were studying the De La Mora method and as you were planning to teach your first class.
Yes, the methodology of the De La Mora Institute that the instructors use, um, and that is part of the course and part of teaching the course. The aspect that I value the most is the weightlifting method because I was able to teach interpreters how to use it themselves, and how I was able to show them that it doesn't matter that if you practice something 1,000 times, but if you're practicing it wrong, if you are repeating something many, many times, but if you're repeating it wrong, you're still doing it wrong. So the weightlifting method, um, I use it myself and was able to teach it to the students so that they can learn things through conscious practice, and so that they are conscious in their learning, and so that they are checking if the way they are interpreting is appropriate and effective.
And so let's talk then about, you guys taking this course and then moving on to setting up your first class. A lot of people would have stage fright. Tell me, Dani, tell me about, your first class. I know you've done other courses in the past, but tell me about your first De La Mora class. How, how, how did you do it? Was it online? Was it in person? How many people did you have? That kind of thing.
Um, for me, it was an in-person course. We have in the community, we have a lot of individuals that are acting as interpreters, but they've never really been formally trained as interpreters. I live in a small rural community. I moved here from Los Angeles, and moving from Los Angeles, California to Logansport, Indiana, it's quite the change. Literally, there are 20,000 individuals here in Logansport, but there's a great need for interpreters. So we handpicked 13 individuals that work in different agencies throughout the community so that they can better serve the community. And we did it in person. For me, it was a little bit of a challenge because the lesson plans that we received from the De La Mora Institute were all tailored for online training. So I had to sort of improvise with the lessons and with the materials, but I think it was very successful. Everybody passed. Out of the 13 individuals, they were really committed to learning. They were very enthusiastic about learning and practicing interpreting. It was a wonderful experience. It really, 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 truly was. It was very long days because I would work every day, and then we would hold 4-hour classes on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So from 5 to 9, I held these individuals captive, and it was truly a wonderful and bonding experience. The community has improved, I believe, with the interpretation services that we're providing throughout the community, the school system. There's somebody from, and not the court, but the public service building. We also have an agency that's called Area 5, which supports the community with assistance with food and other needs that they have as well as an entity that does mental health. So there were individuals that were coming from all sorts of entities that came to the hospital to be able to take this course, and it was truly a wonderful experience.
What about the language pairs that you were addressing?
For the most part, it was Spanish, but we have a Haitian community that's growing, so we did have a couple Haitian individuals. And the second, we're planning a second training right now, and it will be more Haitian immigrants that will be, or Haitian individuals that will be taking the course with us.
Wonderful. What about you, Miguel? Tell us about your first experience. How was it set up, and who your participants were?
Yeah, for my first experience, I was actually very nervous, and I was, you know, making in my head all the scenarios that you could imagine. But at the end of the, at the end of the course, it was great. It was a successful class. It was a very small class. I started with six individuals. Two of them, couldn't follow through. They didn't think, they thought, you know, they didn't know why the 40 hours. eh, they didn't know the reasoning of doing a 40-hour training. And so I was left with four participants. One of them is already an interpreter that interprets in the clinics. He only had about 16 hours course that he took, and he had been doing it for a little bit. And the other three individuals were fairly new to interpretation. Um, since the beginning of the course, I let them know that I provide them with enough information so that they knew that this was a 40-hour commitment, and that after that, um, since they were very new to to interpreting, I had to do a lot coaching and guidance on what to do next. Um, the class was very very interactive, and they did have a lot of questions. We started with they were very shy at the beginning, because it was new, for that person who had as experience as an interpreter. That he was the one with all the questions at the beginning. Eventually, as we continued with more information and more training, then the other individuals started to be part of the class, and they all passed. The four of them passed the class. It was through Zoom, and I think for me is it's very comfortable. I already do other things on Zoom, other trainings on Zoom, and even though I'm not the best tech savvy, Zoom works for me. However, in the future, I would like to look into the doing in-person training, because there are interpreters that are requesting it.
So tell me about the language pairs that were represented in the group that you had.
So unfortunately, the two individuals who didn't continue on the class, one of them was an Arabic interpreter, and the other one was a Swahili interpreter, which are the two main languages that we are needing interpreters for in our state. Um, we're still going to follow up with them to see if they are ready for the next round. But the other four were Spanish, and I think when I started the course, when I started promoting the course, I did offer an extra discount for those languages, that there's a need in our community, because we have plenty of Spanish interpreters, but we don't have enough of the other languages.
Well, that's a really, really great idea. Had not even occurred to me, and I think I might adopt that. That is a really great idea to do that, to, have that little extra encouragement. But of course, I mean, we have to, when we've taken courses, we all know how Spanish is the overwhelming, majority of the participants in courses, and it can be very difficult sometimes to tone that down and bring the language neutral component more to the forefront. What techniques did you use, Dani, that you think might have that helped the those speakers of languages other than Spanish incorporate into your group and feel like it wasn't just interpreter training for Spanish speakers?
Well, fortunately, I had a group that was really interested in languages, and the two individuals that spoke Haitian Creole, they also spoke French, and I'm a French speaker myself, so we actually used French quite a bit for um, comparisons of medical terminology. We were trying to find what the femur was, for example, and it just happens to be femur and in French. And there were women that were really interested in learning French, and it became quite engaging actually. So it was just kind of I was fortunate enough that I speak French, and we were having conversations in French as well when there was a problem with language. How do we say this? How do we're trying to find out how to say it? And it was really interesting. It was quite an exercise actually for my brain to be able to kind of navigate French, Spanish, and English at the same time. Because
Excellent.
I don't speak French every day, but I try to speak it as much as possible.
Miguel, did you find that sometimes you were that some students were more interested in finding out how things were said in one language and then, between one and another language than instead trying to figure out how they could figure out how to say it?
Yes, I think they were very concerned about their proficiency in knowing the exact translation of something rather than and I think that happened before we got to that part of the course in which I explained, that the tools that they have at their disposal when it comes to interpreting, and I think that relieved a lot of that anxiety that they had about, wanting to get things perfectly interpreted, and their concern of not being proficient. I mean, their concern of not being effective, I should say. But then I think once I showed them, there are ways to doing interpretation. You use the tools that you have available to find the appropriate mm, way of explaining something if you can find the direct translation or an equivalent.
Excellent. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's part of what you get when you take a training to become a trainer rather than when you just transition from being a student into a trainer, if that makes sense. You all of a sudden now you have all of these tools at your disposal, and now you've got to try to figure out which tool am I going to share with these students that is going to take them away from just asking me to be, their walking, talking dictionary. And yes, jump in there,
Yes,
Danny.
yes. Well, one of the most frustrating things is I think for students and the trainer as well is the fact that they're always asking you for, well, why don't you just give us the answer? You're supposed to know this. You're supposed to be the best. You're supposed to be the interpreter. Why don't you just tell them how to say it? And when are we going to start seeing all the medical terminology? Because being an interpreter is much more than just knowing medical terminology, because oftentimes you get stumped on a word like I don't know, zipper. If you can't think of how to say zipper, if your mind is not working appropriately and you can't think of it quickly, what happens to the medical terminology after the simple word zipper, which we all assume to know, right? We're interpreters. We're really good at our jobs. According to some of the students, they're like, well, we need the medical terminology now. We want it now. That was very interesting, and I see the frustration and I understand it because I probably was like that at some point in time. Um, but it's really interesting to see it from this side of the table as opposed to being in their seat, and it's really funny. And at the end of the course, they're like, "Well, it does make a lot of sense that it would be this way."
Miguel, it sounds to me when you mentioned the two students that dropped out of the course, that maybe you had a bit of an issue with that as well.
Yes, that made me, as being my first class that I was teaching, and being um, only the languages that were not Spanish, made me think that I was doing something wrong, or that I was not accommodating appropriately for those other languages. At the end of the day, I realized that they were just not ready. But it was a little bit of a downer, and I was like, trying to offer them, just be in the class, stay in the class, don't worry about the payments and don't worry about anything else, just stay. And I guess at the end of the day, it was they didn't plan to for the 40-hour in-person live in front of a camera. And I think that's something that I took as a learning opportunity, so that when I do the next when I promote the next class, I state that and say it enough times so that they know there's a commitment portion of taking the class as well.
Well, what's also interesting, especially when we're talking about the medical track, is that there's a reason for the 40-hour course. And the reason for that 40-hour course is that it is directly tied to the minimum requirement for being able to sit the CCHI or the IMIA exam, correct?
Yes.
So
Yes, correct.
with 16 hours, you're not ever going to have enough of that background that is the minimum background required to sit for those exams.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Miguel. And I think that's one of the things that sets the De La Mora Institute apart from other trainings, because I have taken the cross-cultural exchange, I think it's cross-cultural exchange, but the Bridging the Gap course, it's completely different from what the De La Mora Institute is doing, because the De La Mora Institute is not only providing you with the training that we're teaching is not only providing you with the knowledge that you need to have to be an ethical interpreter, but also it's actually helping you interpret, and you're teaching your students how to interpret, not just to be like, hey, this is what you're supposed to do. This is what you're not supposed to do in this situation. This is ethically wrong. This is ethically right. But you're also making them think about it while practicing interpreting. And I think that's what really truly sets the De La Mora Institute's training apart from other trainings that are probably available out there. And that's one of the reasons why I chose to go with this train the trainer as opposed to the Bridging the Gap, because to me the Bridging the Gap it really never really talked, or like it never really showed an interpreter how to interpret, or it never really demonstrated working interpreters, or it never really allowed me to practice interpreting, if
Yeah,
that makes any sense.
it has a lot of content, it has a lot of excellent content,
Yeah.
but it's more theoretical than it is practical.
Hmm. And it is a great training, but it's very theoretical. There is nothing practical about it.
Now, Miguel, when in, hindsight is always 2020, right? But what would you say about the expectations that you went into the course with versus the actual experience of teaching that first course, especially online?
I think it was pretty straightforward on what I wanted to achieve. I will know that things never happen as we imagine them in our mind, specifically or exactly. But I knew, being the first class, there would be challenges, and it's a process, as anything. Practice makes you good at things. And I personally like that it was a small enough class that I was able to manage the classroom well, that I was able to cover every single section of the material, because it is, once I was teaching it, that's when I realized that it is a lot of material, and I didn't want to miss anything, because I knew that every single thing would benefit those new interpreters, to be great interpreters. And at the end of the course, I was very satisfied, because I knew that they had passed, and I know for a fact that they're going to be good interpreters. I don't remember well, I remember actually when I finished my 40-hour training, by the end of the training, I still didn't know what I was really doing. And I feel that these students, for what they showed, they seemed pretty knowledgeable and pretty understanding of what is expected as an interpreter.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. What about you, Dani? Your expectations versus your actual experiences. How did that compare in terms of teaching?
I guess I was quite nervous at the beginning because, having 13 individuals or having to manage 13 individuals, it was actually quite challenging. I was kind of falling behind, honestly. I was like, 4 hours is not enough to teach all of this. And I expected it to go a lot smoother, especially at the beginning, but there were so many questions from 13 people, and it was truly a challenge to navigate it. I did teach for a little bit at UCLA, and that sort of helped me um, learn how to manage the classroom a little bit better. But I was truly expecting it to go a lot smoother initially. By the end of it, we had a system and it was working really well. But at the beginning, there were some serious bumps on the road. I was like, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this to myself? I could be eating dinner right now, or watching a movie, or reading a book, or doing any other thing other than sitting here with 13 people that may or may not be interested in what I'm saying.
But in the end, you figured it out. And that, of course, is part of not only your process, but if you can show that process to your students, then they will also see a light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, in the end, it turned out to be a very, there was a lot of camaraderie. And because we spent so many hours together, it was like we could joke and we could learn together. And it flowed really well by the end of it. And I was really pleased and happy with it. I'm looking forward to doing it again.
What was your favorite part to teach, Miguel?
My favorite part to teach was the very beginning on the basic information on what is an interpreter. And then because I had students that were very new to to being interpreters. They've done it, they've interpreted for family members and other things as part of their jobs. But I think introducing the profession to new interpreters, it was very satisfying for me because I saw that uh, by the end of the course, those students were already knowledgeable about what you're supposed to do as an interpreter, and they were interested and they were engaged, and they were asking questions, and that made me happy.
What about you, Dani?
I really like the human body. I was actually having a conversation about this today, that I just love the marvels of the human body, and I think it's extremely interesting to me, and it's really cool to be able to see individuals like learn the body systems. I had some nurses, and I actually had a nurse practitioner that just wanted to learn more about interpreting in the course as well. And she was able to help us with a lot of things. And there were three nurses as well that they're still in nursing school, but they're being put in the position that they have to work at a different places. Uh, but they're asking them to interpret. So they have a lot of knowledge in the body systems, and it's to me that was it's a fascinating topic, and I think that's why I really truly love medical interpreting, because there's always something new to learn, even though you think you know everything. And that's what I kept reminding them. I was like, you might think, I don't think I know everything, but you might think like, oh my God, I'm the best interpreter and I know everything that there is about the human body. But there really is so much more to learn. And that just opens a whole new world of linguistic knowledge and other, medical terminology, and medicine as well, because you encourage them to not just look up a word, right? You want them to find out what the word actually means. What is jaundice? We can't just say jaundice to say jaundice, but why, what produces it? How does it come about? What what is affected by bilirubin and all this other stuff? So it's like building those webs in their mind, and it's truly fascinating.
Now, in my personal experience, I have always felt that sharing my knowledge with other people has actually strengthened my skills and made me either a better interpreter, a better listener, a better speaker. For each of you, starting with Miguel, how has this teaching journey enriched your professional path or journey as well?
In the past, I've taught in the classroom, little kids and different grades, but it's been a long time. And you know, I had the experience, but also it was different. It was in a different role, and just going back at being in front of a camera, talking for um, 8 hours straight. Um, it was challenging for me to to keep the motivation because you get to a point in which you think, are they engaged? Are they still interested in what I'm saying? Am I boring that are they bored? Am I being effective? And so when I had those thoughts come up, then I would just check with them. How are you doing? What do you think about this? And talk to them and getting engaged in the class, because it can, especially being the first class, I was thinking, oh my gosh, there's a lot of talking. I didn't think it involved this much talking, this much being present, being there, and directing the whole thing, and at the same time as trying to troubleshoot technology, and yeah, it was a lot, but it was great. It was a good experience for me.
What about you, Danny? How has this experience just affected your professional journey?
I think it has helped me to become a more passionate trainer, I think. And I truly love interpreting. I do it almost every day. Uh, but I'm also training other interpreters. Like I just trained a Haitian Creole interpreter that is working at our hospital. And I think I'm more patient with after learning all the skills from the Mora Institute. It just makes me a more patient trainer and also interpreter, I believe. It just really has enriched that aspect of the way that I see things. Like sometimes in the past I would be like, I don't understand how you don't get this. Like that would run through my head, right? Like it happens to us a lot. It's like, I don't understand how you don't get this. So I just step back and kind of allow them to do their thing. And um, at the hospital, I have them train interpreters train with me for 2 or 3 months before they go out on their own. Because when I started interpreting, I remember that I was just kind of being thrown into it. This was 20 something years ago. And I don't know how long you've been interpreting for, but back then it was, "Oh, you're an interpreter, you're bilingual, go ahead, interpret." You know, I was very fortunate to have great individuals that supported the interpreting field. So I was very fortunate, but at the same time, it was like, here you go. You're going to go to ophthalmology, and you better look up the terminology before you get there because it's going to come up, right? Or you're going to be in cardiology, or you're going to be in neurology, and it's a specialty hospital. So they're not simple appointments, right? So I don't want my interpreters, the interpreters that I'm training right now, I'm training a Spanish interpreter right now that took the course with us and we hired on part-time. I don't want them to not be successful. So I'm trying to be more patient and I'm trying to allow them the time to really learn the medical terminology. And I've developed this system where, you know, easier appointments initially and just like really hit them every day with that medical terminology and have them interpret, have them record themselves. Um, it it I think it's just made me more passionate for interpreting and training, honestly.
And what about you, Miguel? Are you going to trade in your interpreting, hat for training, or are you, going to continue to do both?
I have many things going on. I have a full-time job, and I not close to interpreting. There's interpreting involved in the job that I have as my full-time. Um, I also interpret, but this has really made me think about what I want to do next. So I'm working on developing more other trainings, separate from the 40-hour training, and it it gets me excited to be working on that, and I'm also working on putting on my calendar for next year the trainings that I'm going to teach. So I'm asking those questions to myself and really reflecting. I want to know um, how many. I ask myself, how many of these trainings do you want to teach next year, or are you able to? And I don't know at this point, but hopefully, um, uh, I really enjoyed the experience, and I want to continue doing it as much as I can.
So you bring up an interesting point, which is that we often want to create things that are, to fill whatever gaps and needs we see, and especially in terms of training. Danny, with your system of, maybe creating, a stepping up of, more difficult assignments, to make sure that the person is being prepared to succeed as opposed to fail, setting them up for success.
Mhm.
And you, Miguel, talking about, other types of trainings that you want to do. So I guess what I want to ask you guys is, obviously your training with the train the trainer had an ultimate goal, which, an ultimate result, which was to be able to teach the 40-hour basic medical interpreting course so that those participants can then go on and take the test and get a kind of certification. But I'll start with Miguel since he mentioned it, and then I'll ask you to jump in, Danny. Um, but do you see ways that you will be incorporating the core principles of the weightlifting system and all of the other strategies that are included in the weightlifting system into those new trainings that you're thinking about, Miguel?
Definitely, I think consciously and unconsciously, I'm already going to be having a way in which since I teach the 40-hour class, I'm going to have already those tools at my disposal to say, oh, I should teach, for example, I should teach, if I'm teaching a training on arthritis and other autoimmune diseases, vocabulary, and all the trainings that I work on. If I'm teaching something like that, then I'm obviously gonna use, since I already use it and understand it, the weightlifting method on telling my students, it does practicing makes you helps you learn something, but if you're not practicing it correctly, there's a way, there is a method, and that's where it comes to that's where the weightlifting method comes in play. So yeah, definitely be using the skills that I um, acquired, or the methods that I learned from this training as well.
Great. What about you, Danny?
Yeah, I think they're very important. I think the weightlifting method is important to the training for the 40 hours, but also with the new interpreters. The woman that I just hired, she came through the course with me, and we're constantly talking. When we're training, when she's following me or I'm shadowing her, we're constantly training or talking about the weightlifting method. The cold system, I think, is very important as well. It's part of the weightlifting method. And five or maybe seven of the individuals that went through the training are actually looking to get certified as interpreters. So there were emails sent out. They're like, Danny, can you help us? Can we come up with a way to study? So we're gonna start a study group that's going to meet once a week so that we can help these individuals pass the certification. And I think a lot of it is going to be, using that weightlifting system that they learned through in the course, because to me, it's really it has made me a better interpreter. Uh, I'm not the perfect interpreter by any means, but it has made me a better interpreter. It has made me reflect upon what I do and how I perform the duties that I perform almost on a daily basis. And I'm always constantly thinking about it. And I hope that when they're done with it and they're out there interpreting, that they're also implementing these tools that are provided by the De La Mora Institute, because I think they're phenomenal tools. I hope that they're implementing them to take a closer look at themselves, that they're interpreting at how they're performing the tasks that they're doing. So I guess the
And
short answer would be yes.
well, it's a great answer, and I think it's important that we, when we talk about the weightlifting system, we actually try and explain a little bit about how it's a collection of tools
Mm-hmm,
that we can use to prepare us for actual real live interpreting. The
mm-hmm,
weightlifting method isn't meant to be a method that you use while you're actually working. It's a
mm-hmm,
method that
mm-hmm,
provides you with all of the different, training, the different tools, the different facets um, of all of the skills that you're going to need, and teaches you how to use them and how to develop them so that when you actually are out there in the field working, then you are able to draw on those tools and to actually perform the job. So I know I thought that was a really, really, really good answer. Now, what would you in what way would you encourage others to, and why perhaps would you encourage others to take the training course and become trainers, either directly for courses, to teach courses, or maybe for any other purpose? Miguel, how would you, or why would you encourage others to take this particular course?
I would encourage any other interpreter that has been in the profession for many years, or those who are certified, to become trainers, because we need to share the knowledge that we have gained through the years. By taking this course, I realized that a lot of the information I was familiarized with it already, because from the experience of from my own professional experience, right? And I was not doing anything with it other than I was mentoring and using it for myself. But now, through teaching the course, I can share that knowledge with others. And also, we're able to train those interpreters that we want to see out there in our community. I personally want to prepare interpreters to be ready to interpret when they start in the job, because as Danny was saying, similar to what his experience was, I was just thrown in to interpret. I was an interpreter, even if I didn't, I had to learn myself. I had to do research on my own. I had to do a lot of things on my own to be able to be effective. And now, with all that knowledge and with and knowing how things work, now I can provide that facilitate that for new interpreters to have it a little easier than we had it.
What about you, Danny?
I think that as an interpreter and as a trainer of interpreters, what has helped me the most is the pedagogical aspect of the course and the methodology that Agustin de la Mora and Elian Marcus implement in their training. I think I will forever be thankful to them because it has changed, it literally has changed the way that I see training an interpreter and the way that I actually see interpreting because of the and a lot of it has to do with the weightlifting method. Learning the weightlifting method has really changed the way that you practice interpreting and the way that I'm training my interpreters to interpret. I think it's a phenomenal course, and I think it's a phenomenal handbag of tools that you have at your disposal. That Agustin de la Mora and Elian Marcos have done a tremendous job of putting a great training together, and I cannot say enough. I mean, I'm super happy that I took it, and I think it's making my community better.
Now, I would like to hear maybe an anecdote from your most recent class that you taught. Is there something you wish you could have done differently, or is there a funny anecdote or something that you will never forget about that particular training course? Let's start with you, Danny. Got you on the spot.
I think that I don't know if it's an anecdote. I think it's more like a lesson that I learned. Be prepared for 1,000 questions on the first day and the second day because it's just going to happen. Maybe have a day prior to the first day where you can answer questions. If I'm going to do the training in person with 15 individuals or 13 individuals or however many, I think anything over 10 individuals is 10 students. It's a lot. It's a for this type of course, it might be a lot, maybe, I don't know. But it's just come prepared for a lot of questions because there are so many questions. And it was a large group, I think. It was not so large, but 10 people are not that many people, but it felt really large. The very first class, I was like, I can't believe there are these many questions. I want to run away.
What about you, Miguel?
For me, it was the body systems. Since it was a small class, then we only had 4 students to cover 4 body systems. Then the rest of the systems I had to present. So I had to be creative on how I presented those rather than just repeat what was on the slides or play the recordings that explained what was on the slides because I started by doing that. Then I realized that it became monotonous and kind of it was I thought immediately this is going to be boring if I just do that. So I had to be creative and find ways on how to best present this information. And now it gave me the opportunity to learn. And then for the next class, then I will be prepared with something different than what I did this time.
Now, I know that our listeners would not forgive me if I didn't ask you how you marketed yourselves and what perhaps the structure of your class. I believe that Danny, yours was more of an institutional class that was sponsored perhaps by the hospital you work for, or if I'm incorrect, then please, fill me in. But how were you able to get the course up and running? How were you able to find the location and publicize the fact that you were providing this course? Because this is an important topic. I think people who are interested in becoming instructors sometimes don't know, how they're going to make the ends meet, so to speak, if they're going to be able to, make back the investment that they, put up over 1, 2, 3, 4 sessions, however many. Obviously we always have to invest in our careers, invest in ourselves in order to go forward. But tell me about your structure, your particular situation. on, making and then marketing and, having the class come to fruition?
Well, I guess I'm spoiled because I have a hospital that is they've been very supportive of my endeavors, and we actually wrote a grant from the state. We obtained a grant from the state of Indiana, and within that grant, we're trying to provide more language access to our community. We live in a very small rural community, and there are several factories or meat processing plants, rather, and they hire a lot of immigrants. So we were fortunate enough to apply for a grant and obtain a grant that covered all of the costs that pretty much everything, truly. And with the hospital, with the support of the hospital, um, I have a marketing team, and they put together the flyers. This girl, Mackenzie, she's phenomenal, and she put together all my flyers. And we just contacted, I basically did the networking within the community, and I reached community leaders and I said, hey, this is what I want to do because I think this is something that our community needs. So we were able to give back to the community, and it's making it a better place, quite honestly. I think even though we have our struggles, we're on the news right now for certain things. It's not good in that aspect. But we're making it a better place, providing interpreter services um, for our community. And yeah, I was just truly fortunate that I had the support of the hospital.
What about you, Miguel? How did you make it happen?
For me, it was a lot different than Danny. Congratulations, Danny, and that's exciting that you have all that support. Take advantage of it. I did it all myself, and it was also a learning opportunity for me because with my I have a small business, but all I do with my business is serve the clients that I've been serving for a long time, and this is a new addition to the business. So I have I'm in the process right now of um, getting myself prepared to be able to promote the class. I learned that I learned that I need to get more involved in the community. I learned that I need to get in contact with specific uh, people in the hospital networks, in the it, I have a very good relationship with the agencies, interpreting agencies here, and they helped me. They were very good at promoting my classes and sending people, and but it was a chance for me to learn that there are things that I need to do in order for the class to be successful. And I'm working on that. At the end of the day, it's a it's being a trainer is a business for you because you invest time, you invest resources on teaching this class. So if you're doing it, you might as well do it well so that you're effective and people sign up for your class. And for my future classes, I think as I said, it was a learning opportunity, and I just hope that they're going to be uh, I'm going to have a lot more people signed up.
Well, I want to congratulate both of you for your successes, for your commitment to interpreter training to your communities, and also for the lifelong journey of learning, which you both seem so obviously committed to continuing. So thank you so much for joining us here today, Dani, and thank you, Miguel.
Thank you, Maria.
Thank you for having us.
So remember, to all of our audiences, that the best way to polish your skills is by sharing your knowledge with others. And I think that what Miguel and Dani have shared with us today is a prime example of that. Thank you so much for joining us here today on Subject to Interpretation. I promised you some news, and up next in January of 2025, we will be starting again the next Train the Trainer program. It'll be again taught by Mr. Agustin de la Mora and Miss Eliane Sefer Marcus, and all tracks begin on January 4th, 2025. You'll have an opportunity to take the core track, which is 30 hours, and then another 15 hours to prepare to teach the medical interpreting track, and then another 15 hours to prepare to teach the legal track. So put it on your calendars, put it on your to-do lists, and definitely on your New Year's resolutions that you can do that. These guys have done it, and they've done it admirably, and you guys can as well. So keep up with our news at delamorainstitute.com. And to our viewers and listeners, thank you so much for joining us here on Subject to Interpretation. We hope that you have enjoyed this podcast, and we look forward to hearing from you on our YouTube channel, as well as at podcast at delamorainstitute.com. Please send us an email. We would love to hear your comments. Thanks for joining us again, and never stop learning.